Hello, my name is Nathan Schilling. I'm on aerospace undergraduate major, philosophy minor. I took this class to fulfill a requirement, but I've also had some experience with racial bias in the criminal justice system. In high school, I had a friend get pulled over for driving while black, and the only reason he got off was partially because he was driving my car. And basically what happened was, I'm the type of person that speeds, and he's the type of person that drives the speed limit or 5 below. And somehow, within 15 minutes of him getting behind the wheel, he got pulled over, and I never got anything for it. But in regards to the prompt, I feel like people do have some personal responsibility, but a lot less than what other people make out to be. Because we don't really have control over a lot of factors. You don't really have control of where you lived. You're constrained by your employment, your race. You don't have control over your parents or the race of who you are or anything like that. Where you live often determines if you go to jail or not, mostly because police control certain neighborhoods like Beecher Terrace more. Like people who live in Beecher Terrace wouldn't want to live in Beecher Terrace, and then police find more crime in that neighborhood, a la kissing frogs logic. Like basically because they patrol the area more, they find more crime. And there are other things you don't really have control over, like mental illness. Eugene Puryear says in his book Shackled and Chained, 56% of state prisoners, 45% of federal prisoners, and 64% of local jail inmates have recent history of mental health problems, and they don't really get a whole lot of treatment in prison. But again, the fact that they have mental health issues isn't something that they have control over, and they can't just treat themselves. And a lot of times they don't know where to look for adequate treatment or get adequate treatment. Like in the movie, Charles McDuffie didn't choose to get PTSD or have nightmares from killing someone. It's something he didn't choose. It's just what kind of is given to him. So he has to deal with all this stuff. And I think the biggest thing with personal responsibility is Demetria's story, because she didn't choose to have her mother die and then not get real justice, and so she had to. This caused her to act out, and no one really cares about her, which is really heartbreaking. I found that was the worst thing about the movie for me. And this is not all of this is to say that there is no personal responsibility. Keith lays returned to jail by trying harder to stay sober, but ultimately, because of the way the system is set up, it's nigh impossible for him to get a good job as a convict. Also, with someone with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and because of that. In the end, even if he tried really hard to stay sober and take his medications, or if he, because he didn't have a job, he wouldn't be able to pay for them. And so eventually he would have just fallen right back into jail. So I guess, even though there's some personal responsibility, it doesn't help, in some situations. Because, there's the best path and the worst possible path. Best path is the American dream, and the worst possible path is often ending up in prison. And I think we need to have more compassion for other people and be able to deal with people who put in a situation where their worst possible path is really terrible, and need to be able to do something about that. And I think our default response to people who experience illness and trauma should be act with compassion rather than trying to lock someone up and throw them away so we don't have to deal with them. So I guess that my biggest takeaway from the class is responding to people with compassion.